Wish it was less. Good afternoon. Obviously, a really disappointing loss. I'd like to congratulate Arkansas State and Coach Anderson. I think it was a very, very physical game. It was a great effort game on both sides of the football from us and from them. I thought both sides really kind of put all they had out into that ball game. And proud of our players for their effort, not as proud of our execution. And we had a good week of practice, and it just didn't come to fruition for us. The execution, I think, was the thing that was probably the most disappointing. I think that we pride ourselves in not turning the football over, not having penalties. Obviously, we turned the football over in the first half that I think were really, really critical turnovers, as all turnovers tend to be, but these tended to really take away some momentum. And then we had some penalties on both sides of the football that either kept one of their drives alive or killed one of our drives. And, for us, especially right now on offense where there's some struggles, we can't have those type of things. Those things can't happen. And I think our players understand it, and we've been pretty good at that, but obviously we need to refocus a little bit along those lines to make sure those things don't happen. Players were obviously very, very disappointed after the game. We knew going in it was going to be a hard-fought game. I think Arkansas State has a good football team. They challenge you with some of the schemes that they do. I was asked the question earlier by another media entity, and I think that they didn't do anything different than what we'd seen. And a lot of times when you're going to play a team that's had an open date, you have to kind of project a little bit that they might make some adjustments here and adjustments there. And quite honestly, Arkansas State didn't do that. And I think it hurt us on offense in particular because I think we maybe went a little bit overboard in kind of making some projections about they might do this to us, they might do that. Pretty soon you start blocking ghosts. And then the other thing offensively I think we need to do is we need to pare some things down. We're doing way too much right now, and I think that's hurting our execution significantly because we're asking some guys that maybe haven't been in the program as long to function in some things that they really don't have any historical intellect about. They don't have anything that they can draw back on. And so now, obviously, that leads us to this ball game, which is going to be a great challenge for us. Kentucky, I think, right now is they are obviously 4-1, which is outstanding from a historical perspective, and they are playing, I think, with a lot of confidence right now. They obviously had a great win over South Carolina. I think Coach Stoops has done really an incredible job there in the 2 years that he's been there in kind of changing the culture. And it's evident whenever you watch the video that they play extremely hard. They're running to the football offensively and defensively. They're playing with fanatical effort. And they are very, very multiple on both sides of the football. And but they're with very few mental errors. Some of their younger players have really stepped up for him, some of the guys that he recruited, but quite honestly, some of his older players have really stepped up too. Some of their juniors and seniors, and this is not necessarily a young football team. They have some maturity. But I think that group is playing well, and they've stayed, I think, pretty healthy. Obviously, there's going to be a number of guys that are going to be back with them this next week. And they're playing with a lot of players, and so consequently, I think their players are playing fresh. And again, they're playing with a lot of confidence right now, and so it's going to be, a huge challenge for us kind of going in this week. But it also presents great opportunities too, and we are not obviously unaccustomed to playing against SEC foes. This football team's not, and so we're anxious for that opportunity. Questions?
Coach, we heard the list of the MASH you had. How do you overcome things like that?
Well, yeah, sometimes that's the game of football. I mean, you're going to have some injuries. Obviously, the injury list, at least for the last couple seasons, is it's been a little bit disheartening, but that's kind of part of it. And this is opportunities for other guys to step up. It does, I think, when you start taking away some seniors like that, you take away not just some of their football playing experiences, but you take away some leadership that's involved there too. I mean, if you look at that list of names, those are some pretty significant senior leaders, and now that gives some other guys more of an opportunity to step up, and that's what they need to do. They need to step up. I think we are a deeper football team than what we were last year, and much deeper than what we were the year before, and much deeper than we were the year before. And so while you hate it for the young men, as I mentioned last week, that anybody gets injured because you recognize how few opportunities we have in this game to actually play the game and create those memories for them. Obviously it impacts I hate it for our football team too, because to some degree it hurts the team, but we've got to overcome it, and that's again part of what this game requires us to do, is to overcome and relish the opportunity to overcome.
Probably just talk about the struggles offensively. I know you were minus a couple of guys on your OL. Do you ask yourself the question why, or do you see it? And how do you?
Well, I think, I think you're always. I think the players would tell you this. I know the staff would tell you this. I'm always interested in cracking the code. Sometimes when you get older, you become a little bit more set in your ways. Some of that kind of comes from experiences. I think that I tend to be kind of one that, because this game has so many variables in it, and we are always in a modification time frame, whether it be from recruiting to practicing now, because obviously there's practice restrictions, to the number of scholarships you have, to all those other kinds of things, the squad size. You've got to be willing to kind of adjust, and so we're always kind of looking to try to crack the code. I'm always wanting to know if there's a better way to do something. I don't think that the injuries are anything to do with what we've done here in relation to our. I mean, we've looked at strength training, we've looked at our training room, we've looked at some of these. They're just injuries that happen normally in the game. It's not like we have a bunch of hamstrings. And you can look back and say, why do we have an imbalance between, the quad and the bicep for Morris? Is there some issues along those lines that we need to address? But these are game injuries. These are contact injuries, and so you learn to deal with them and move on.
I mean, why do you think the struggles are offensively?
I think that some of this has to do, with trying to establish this post-Colton Browning era a little bit in terms of, again, Colton was a very, very unique player because of his ability to be able to create his own offense. And, and Colton was best whenever he was out there running around, as I've said before. And now we're in a little different phase right now where, the offensive line has to take a bigger burden. The running backs have to take a bigger burden in relation to trying to establish a run game, because you're not going to have Colton back there just kind of scrambling around. And so I think some of it's systematic. I think some of it, again, has to do with this trying to carry forward the good things that we've done in the past, because I think, offensively, a couple of years ago, we were kind of the talk of college football in a lot of ways. And it's hard to lose some of those things because they've been good to you. But sometimes they don't necessarily fit the personnel that you have currently. And in the process, you have to kind of start trimming some things down to make sure that it fits your own personnel. We wanted to be going into the season, I think, a run play action team, and that has really not come full circle yet. And some of it's just still of adjustment. Some of it has to do with some of the teams that we're playing and some of the schemes. But our play actions have certainly been better than our run game here of late. But we really haven't got much of a rhythm going, and that's something that we've got to establish offensively, is we need to get into a rhythm. And unfortunately, the other night against Arkansas State, we had two kind of drives going there a little bit where we had a little bit of a rhythm and we were kind of getting into it, and then we had two turnovers, and that tends to kill your rhythm.
Coach, you talked about, again, kind of along the same lines, whenever you were at fall camp and Pete was out there for the first time with the offense, did you see a lot of things that made you believe that they could handle all this that you were throwing at them offensively? And was it Arkansas State, or did you see it before in other games, even though you had those three game-winning drives that you thought at the time, okay, I'm seeing this, and maybe we are throwing too much at them?
I don't know that we were throwing too much at them at that point in time, Tabby. I think what happens is that as you struggle, you tend to want to say, well, you know what, we're not as good as this as what I thought we were going to be. And that's kind of going back again to the kind of that preseason game and some of those things that you'd like to have in college football. We don't have any opportunities to experience anything against anyone else other than ourselves. And there was every right, I think, from an offensive perspective, to believe that, that we were going to be able to run the football effectively and control the ball on those lines. And certainly, I think that we've shown and have shown even to this point the opportunity to maybe push the ball a little further down the field in the passing game off play action than what we've done in the past. I think Jalen Holley's third in the nation in terms of long explosion plays right now. And so that part of it is still kind of coming around. But I think that the frustrating part, I think, has been the run game in relation to thinking that we could really run the football and be able to do those things kind of regardless of who we were playing. And that hasn't worked. And so then you start grabbing some other things that you used to do and saying, well, if we're not able to do this, then we need to add this. And then you add this. And then pretty soon, it becomes a little bit of a confluence of too many different things. And so now I think it's important for us to vet ourselves and say, okay, based off of our personnel currently, what and obviously that's in flux to some degree because of some of the injuries, but what does our identity need to be now based off of this early body of work that we have?
When you're looking back at film, and like you talked about, Colton could run around and stuff, and I've seen Pete have a couple of keepers for some sizable games, but when you look at like an Arkansas State who you play year in and year out, what does their defense do that maybe poses an advantage for them to not have to worry about a guy like Colton scrambling around, and to where they're able to halt other things y'all are trying to do on offense?
Well, I think that I think the interesting thing about the Arkansas State game was really Colton didn't really get to play against them very often.
That's very true. Now I think about it.
Yeah, and so, and Arkansas State's got a good defensive group. They're number one in the conference in rushing defense. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit tougher to run the ball against teams that are like that. Although,
Troy or something, just any of those teams that you play year in and year
well, I think it all starts up front. It all starts with owning the line of scrimmage, and the better you are to own the line of scrimmage on either side of the football, the more able you are to control the run game.
My last question about the offense, then I'll move on.
No.
You've talked about Colton, and in the past, he was your best player, and that's why you molded the offense around him and built, did some things that maybe you hadn't done in the past, the offensive coordinator. But is there one guy over there right now that you can say he is our best player, and we need to try to work this offense around him? Or
Yeah, I don't know that there's one guy. I think that we have more guys that I think we're comfortable getting the football to. There was a time frame when it was Colton Browning and Brent Leonard. Okay, and everything went right through those two guys. Those two best players, and you're going to run your offense through them. I think that we have some good running backs in our program right now. I think that Rashawn Caesar and Jalen Holley and Kenzie Jackson have all proved that they're very, very capable receivers and are good players. And you'd love to be able to distribute the ball. Offensively, if you can distribute the ball, then you become much harder to defend. But we're not doing a great job of being able to do that right now in terms of ball distribution on a consistent basis. And most of it has to do with not necessarily sometimes it's just really more the offensive execution. And maybe some of that goes back to we're just maybe not getting enough repetitions at a play because we have, again, this, lack of a better term, this confluence of ideas and thoughts and that kind of thing. And so we've had some discussions about that this week offensively and making sure that even if it's not necessarily a great look that we're running it up against, we better be able to just be good at some things. And regardless of having to try to be perfect every snap. And I think there's been a little bit of this concept that we want to be perfect on every – we want to have the perfect play called on every snap. And that leads to more and more things.
Todd, a couple of weeks ago you made the comment you felt like if you hadn't thrown the ball 70 times in the ball game, you felt like because of that week and a half referring to, you could get there. I watched the better part of that game the other night on the internet, and it looked like you wanted to get there, but
Well, that kind of comes back to what what do you want your identity to be, and I don't know at this point in time, going into this game anyway, that our identity can be all that we thought it was going to be early on in the season. And I'm not discouraged. That was one game, because I do believe we are getting much better now. Obviously, at throwing the football, and we haven't been near as consistent throwing the football as what I would like to see us. Now, some of that has to do with there's not as much of a possession passing game right now as what there used to be. You're not seeing the little 5-yard dump-offs to Brent Leonard and the 7-yard hitch to Tavares May. You're not seeing a lot of those things, and so consequently there's not this possession passing game right now. The passing game has tended to be a more over-the-top mentality than it has been underneath, and that's going to lead to some big plays as we've got, but it's going to lead to maybe some lesser stats and some lesser completion percentages. What I was talking to last week is I was thinking that we're getting to that point to where we're much more rhythmic in our passing game. Our quarterback is having, again, Pete's having to learn on the run here in relation to some of these things, because it's not the norm. I mean, it's not the norm in college football. And so even though he's had some exposures, he was in more of an NFL system rather than this kind of what Colton Browning was doing. And so all those things are learning curves, and we're trying to quickly accelerate that. But it's still been a little bit of a struggle. And as I mentioned last week, this is really, for me, this is really hard to swallow. I mean, it just is really hard, because I've been an offensive guy for a long time, and this is the least productive offense that I've been around in 31 years, and that's got to change.
Well, Braley came in, and I don't know how much Arkansas State backed off of their coverage, but there had to be some encouragement there with the way he took that group down.
I know I was pleased with Braley. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, obviously we got back into the Colton Browning system with Braley in there, because Braley has that knowledge base of kind of that, and so I was pleased with him in relation to the precision, how fast the ball was getting out, and the timing between he and his receivers, because he's been with those guys for a while, and he came right in and went right down the field. He had one bad snap in there where he kind of laid a ball up. He took a chance, which in that point in time in the game you don't necessarily mind from your quarterback, but that's the one thing that, as Braley knows, that we've discussed. His desire sometimes to always make the big play can kind of create opportunities for the defense, and I've got to get him completely settled down into going out there and just taking what they give you. But I thought he did a great job coming in and moving the football team 97 yards, and whatever it was, 7 plays.
Coach, this Kentucky team, basically one overtime game away from being undefeated offensively. They look so cold. What makes them so dangerous on that side?
Well, I think that they're a spread team. The offensive coordinator came from Troy, and so those things that you kind of grew up seeing Troy do, that's what Kentucky's doing. They've had a little bit of Auburn to them in terms of some of the misdirection type of things, to where you have these shiny, flashy objects fly across your face, and from a defense perspective, sometimes you want to go out and bite that, and it's just really eyewash. It's a mirage, and so they have a little bit of that to them also. But and again, sometimes I'm not a big stat guy early in the season. I'm a big stat guy late in the season, because I think your data can become so skewed by some results, and obviously they are scoring some points, but the 3 overtime game kind of helped them, their scoring average there too, when you start talking about this lack of data. But they're doing a really good job on offense. They're very multiple on offense in terms of what they do, and the same thing goes defensively. This is certainly the most multiple defense that we've seen, from variety of fronts, variety of blitzes, variety of coverages, and so consequently, this is going to be a real test, I think, mentally for both sides of the football in terms of what am I seeing, because they do so many things, And it's really the same defense that we played here a few years ago whenever Coach Stoops was the defense coordinator at Florida State. They've made some adjustments and made some changes based off their personnel, but their overall scheme is kind of what they did at Florida State a few years ago when we played them.
They seem to be playing with the most confidence they've had in a long time, and a lot of that I know probably has to do with Coach Stoops. And they're talking to you about the way your schedule falls, and sometimes you don't want a bye week if you're cruising, and then you don't want to go out of conference if you're cruising or whatever. Or do you feel like with the way that last week went, looking back at the first 4 games you played, you went into every game with a lot of confidence, and with the game-winning drives especially. Do you feel like your team is dealing with a lack of confidence at this point just because of the way that the game went and it knocked you down from?
No, I would hope not, because again, I don't ever want to base anything off one game, and I try to make sure that the players understand that too, because if you do that, you're going to get on a roller coaster ride between the highs and lows of a college football season. There are time periods whenever you're going to play above your capabilities, and that's not the norm. There's times whenever you're going to play below your capabilities, as we did this last week, but that doesn't mean that's the norm. I think that again, you get tired of me continuing to talk about, but I believe a lot of these old adages are really true. That's why you continue to hear them all the time from every coach, right? It's preparation. If you prepare well, then you've got a great chance of playing well. Doesn't guarantee it, because there's still that game day emotion and that game day commitment and a resolve to get things done. And this was a one game thing for us, and that's the way that I'm viewing it. We didn't play as well as what we've played prior to that. Even defensively, we didn't play well. Thus the 560 yards and the 6-point-some-odd yards per play. Now the 0-0 looked good at halftime, but it was really more because Arkansas State's offense didn't want to win the game either. Right? And you start looking at their turnovers and their penalties, and we need to play better as a whole football team. And I think this team's focused on that, and they understand that. But there's no question that, going back to your original part of your statement, Kentucky they're on that emotional high right now, and that is a dangerous football team when you get teams like that, because hope brings belief, and belief brings wins, right? You've heard me say that multiple times also. And right now, because of, again, past history, they had a marquee win this last week, and all of a sudden that hope is now turned into belief. And belief is a dangerous thing. And, for our fan base, that's kind of what happened 2 years ago. When we beat Arkansas, all of a sudden the hope turned into belief, and now all of a sudden it's Auburn in overtime, and it's a close game against Baylor, and then it continues to, breed itself. And that's kind of where they're at right now, and that's what makes them so dangerous.
In terms of your rushing attack with Saturius out, who do you look upon now, and is Tyler big enough to be every down ball carrier?
Oh, I think Tyler is a really, really good back, and so I think that he is, yes. It does change that little different style that we were talking about earlier. And that means that Kalen Watson, the true freshman, has got to step up, and Nate Metters has got to step up. Devontae McNeil's out for the season. That would have been obviously the next move after Tyler at the early part of preseason camp. But that means those other guys have got to step up. But I have full confidence in that Tyler can carry that burden and handle that many snaps, that type of thing.
And take a look at the rest of your depth chart. I know that you had some movement a lot because of injury, but one thing that stuck out was Harley as your number 1 tight end going into this week.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple others, and I can't even find it, but can you just talk about the movement on your depth chart?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think Harley's playing really, really well right now, and Alec is a little bit banged up right now. And able to play, but maybe not at the 100% that we saw him earlier in the season. Mm-hmm.
I guess that was all of them.
Well, I think that we do expect Chase Region back. He's obviously back from the funeral now, and so the right tackle position now. it will be Chase, and then Frank Sutton, for a redshirt freshman, played pretty well this last week and has some things he's got to get corrected, as did Bao Chung, Jimmy Chung, and so they've earned themselves some more snaps, and obviously Frank's going to get the start also. So,
looking at the announcement of Coach Blakely's retirement after the season, that makes you the longest tenured coach. I mean, you're the king of the mountain right now. You're going to take that over.
Yeah, after
just
5 years.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing, right? I mean, it's good to know that you've lasted longer than I guess everybody else in the conference. It's a little bit of an indictment on college football though right now too, and it goes both ways. Okay, I'm talking about coaches getting fired early, but I'm also talking about coaches leaving early. And instead of trying to build a program, and my congratulations, obviously, to Coach Blakeney. I think the world of him. I think he's a great football coach, and I think he's a great person in this conference. Sorely going to miss it, but not just this conference, but college football. Because I think that he was at that age, obviously, from an experience standpoint and from an age standpoint, to where there are some things that are always going to be around in college football, and he was one of the guardians of that, of kind of the old school stuff. And I'm not talking about bad stuff. I'm talking about good things that that happened back in those early days when they started kind of giving full scholarships and offering opportunities to minorities and all the other things that he's transitioned through. And there's wisdom that comes with that. And I always appreciate it because I'm the chair of the conference coaches groups when we meet, and I always appreciated his wisdom when he spoke. And so I'm glad you gave me that forum and opened that door, because I'd like to say how sorely college football is going to miss Larry Blakeney and the things that he's brought, but also just kind of who he is. And hopefully all of us can ride off into the sunset along those same lines. Doesn't happen very often anymore in college football, but hopefully more can do it in the future.
Last question for you.
Uh-huh.
Talk about hope, leading to believe, and belief leading to wins. And we've seen hope at an all-time high around here in your tenure. And you talking about, in your, how many years was it? 31, I think you said?
I'm sorry?
31 years?
Yeah, I think this is 32. I think I've done it for 31. I think this is 32 right now.
But you talked about this is one of the least productive offenses, or just trying to figure them out and stuff. Does your hope ever falter, or do you feel like this team has, or is it because of the foundation you've built over the last couple of years that they know there's always a way?
No, hope falters when everybody quits. That's when hope falters. And I know that this team is not going to quit. And I know this staff isn't going to quit. We're dealing with some issues, and we'll work our way through it. And you'd love for it to all just snap your finger and say it's magic and here it is. But there's too much when you start talking about all the young people that you're dealing with and all the things that you're getting ready to see. There's sometimes it's not that easy. If it was, then Riley could come in whenever I'm tired and all that kind of thing. Tabby, you could come in. You've been a guest coach and could come in and do it. It's really not that easy. But I don't want to make it sound like that it's brain surgery either, because it's not that either. And I've never operated on anybody, so I don't know that brain surgery is a good anecdote to that. But and without sounding arrogant, because I don't want to sound that, because I have been humbled way too many times in my life to know this. I feel strongly that we will work our way through this, because not just the players, but we are competitive people, And I know that if you have got competitive people that are smart, which I believe that we are, then you work your way through it. And so I don't have any concerns along those lines. I just know we need to get there sooner rather than later. But that's everybody's mission, is to get to that.
Part of the reason why I asked that is I remember like the Cam Blakes and stuff that was here back whenever and talking about, going up against, Power 5 schools that, we're going to go collect a paycheck and hurry up and come home, but you changed that, especially after 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think we're, while we want their paycheck, don't get me wrong. I don't think we're necessarily, that's the reason for our football team to go play Kentucky or LSU or Texas A&M or down the road Georgia and Alabama and Oklahoma and the rest of them. So we'll take their money, but we're not just going up there to collect a paycheck and not put the work in.
Yeah, and that was kind of thing, like the mindset before you got here or before some of those close games.
I agree.
And so, the fact that just last week was just kind of like a speed bump, and like they're still back in that mindset of like we can go and compete.
We had a very good practice on Sunday, and while it was a lighter practice, it was a very focused practice. I think that, quite honestly, I probably I talk all the time about living in the now moment, right? And I don't handle losing very well. I'm a really, really bad loser. I think players sometimes handle that better than I do as a coach, because I think that when you're at that age, then life's going to go on forever, and there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and all those other kinds of things. Then you get to be my age, and you recognize just really, really how few of those opportunities that they're going to have. Not me, but that they're going to have. And again, I turned that corner quite a few years ago, but I mean, the reason I want to see them live this college dream. I mean, this is just such a wonderful, I was afforded it, and I want them to have some of those same experiences. And so it crushes me when all of a sudden they don't get everything they want out of it. And it doesn't mean that we can't learn lessons from this, because obviously, this is life. You're faced with adversity, and now you have to respond to it. But this is a speed bump, and that is exactly what it is. And there is nothing, I found this out many times, there is nothing that a good win doesn't cure. Nothing. You come back with a good win, and all of a sudden life's really good. And then all of a sudden, but again, I don't get on necessarily the roller coaster. I want to live in the now moments, and right now I'm dealing with the now, and I'm not worried about, last week or the week before that or any of those other kinds of things, But it's, you're right, whenever I travel around town, which I don't get to do very often, this week has been different than the previous ones where, it was, oh, coach, great, great season, great, all that kind of stuff. Boy, tough loss. All of a sudden you can see it in their eyes too, that it's just, we're so societal right now, or in society, we are so built on the now moments, and that's, that's probably a good thing, but you can't ride the roller coaster. Sorry for the bully pulpit. That's true. That's true. There's there's this either wisdom or lack of wisdom, right?
So, yeah, you're the oldest tenured coach now. You got all the wisdom.
I know. Matter of fact, Larry said something about that too, which is crazy, because I really hadn't given it a whole lot of thought at that point in time, and